Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I'm Jonathan Kenny, Head of Commercial at Securitas Hong Kong. APAC is one of the most exciting regions in the world, but also one of the most complex. Growth is fast, risks are connected, and the pace of change is only increasing. For organizations, that creates a real challenge. The problem today is not the lack of information, it's the opposite. We have more data, alerts, reports, and headlines than ever before. And at the same time, technology is giving bad actors new speed, scale, and sophistication, from phishing and fraud to deepfakes and social engineering. In APAC, this matters because risks no longer sit neatly in separate boxes. Cyber, geopolitical, operational, reputational, and physical security risks are increasingly connected. And that's why risk intelligence is so important. It helps organizations move from information overload to clear insight, from reacting late to preparing early, from seeing risk as a headline to understanding what it actually means for your people, assets, operations, and reputation. So the real question is, how do we cut through the noise? How do we turn information into insight and insight into action? That is exactly why we are here today, for navigating the noise, mastering risk intelligence in corporate security. We are joined here today by the intelligence experts. Sophie Kearney, lead risk intelligence consultant, specializing in strategic risk management. Laura Stevens, head of intelligence solutions, leading the tools and framework that deliver a definitive decision-making advantage. Alma Abraham, risk intelligence analyst, deep diving into emerging regional threat assessments. And lastly, Josh Mendelson, global intelligence analyst, monitoring global audit trends and a macro level security shocks. These experts share what they are seeing across APAC and how organizations can stay ahead of an increasingly volatile risk landscape. With that, I'll hand it over to the team.
That's great. Thank you, Jonathan. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We will start off by giving you a really quick rundown on what today's webinar is going to feature. So firstly, we will have an introduction to what risk intelligence is and why it matters for an organisation, institution security. We will then have a really high-level overview of the converging risks in the APAC region, having a look at what current landscape and what the impact of these threats and risks are on different businesses and industries. We'll also have a look at what the future outlook is for the region and having some insights from our experts on what these trends and threats are likely to look like over the next 12 to 24 months. And finally, we will have a look at some practical strategies for staying relevant and agile in the region, and specifically looking at businesses' security and how they can look to improve that in line with these emerging threats. We have also, in the background, got running a Menti quiz and some areas of questions for input from those of you joining us today on the webinar. So if you would like to scan the QR code on your phone and enter the code, you will be able to have some inputs on some of our slides. You can either scan the QR code or you can join at menti.com and then input the code shown there at the bottom of the screen, which is 6763817. So we will firstly move on to our first question from our Menti, which is, how does your organisation currently receive intelligence? That could be you have your own in-house intelligence team, that you have it outsourced or use a third-party provider, that your main source of intelligence is from the government or other kind of authorities, local authorities, police, or that you don't use intelligence currently at the moment. Start to hopefully see some responses coming in. Perfect. So what we see, obviously being a private provider ourselves within Securitas, is increasingly organisations combination of different types of intelligence. We see that as a really effective way to receive intelligence at different levels and to suit different customer critical intelligence requirements. So it is a really great way of ensuring that you have all bases covered, receiving intelligence from third parties or outsourcing is becoming increasingly common alongside the use of security partners. But yeah, the combination of this it is a really effective way to help ensure that organisations are protected across the industry that they operate in, the regions, and it is a really, really effective way of doing so. Well, thank you very much for your contributions. We'll move on to the next slide. So what is risk intelligence and why does it matter to organisations? For us, risk intelligence is the ability to identify, analyse and act on threats and risks using timely, relevant and trusted information. It brings together data, technology and human expertise, typically from our analysts in the Risk Intelligence Centre, to turn complex signals into clear, actionable decisions. Organisations today face several key challenges. First, what we see organisations facing increasingly often is an information overload. There's simply too much data out there, making it difficult to extract meaningful insights, especially for what the exact implications are for you as an organisation or an entity, your people and your assets. Secondly, there's a lack of relevant information. Having data alone isn't enough, and organisations need to have the right intelligence at the right time, delivered to the right stakeholder to make sure that they can make effective decisions. Thirdly, the information landscape, specifically information disorder, such as mis, dis and malinformation, makes it increasingly difficult for organisations to see through the noise and what it is that really matters to them. False and biased information combined with human error and emerging technologies can significantly distort risk abilities, and we increasingly see that implicated by the use of artificial intelligence, which is something that Josh will come on to later as well. And finally, strategic security practices are becoming an increasing hindrance for organisations, with traditional controls quickly becoming outdated and leaving organisations exposed to evolving threats. And for us, this is why risk intelligence matters. It helps to cut through the noise and validates the information for organisations to provide them with real-time, decision-ready insights. It enables them to move from reactive to proactive security and prioritising the right risks, responding faster and staying resilient in a consistently changing threat landscape. In short, risk intelligence turns uncertainty into clarity, and that is critical for effective modern security. So the role of intelligence plays a critical part of what it is that we do ourselves and what we see organisations using to help protect themselves. Today, organisations are operating in a consistently fast-paced and complex world, and we're dealing with ever-growing problem, which is the globalisation and rapid technology development, which means that security is increasingly difficult for organisations to employ across the board, as well as threats becoming less confined by borders. Security risks operate 24/7, with global events having an immediate local impact and organisations flooded with endless data points. At the same time, both existing and emerging threats continue to evolve and become increasingly difficult for organisations to navigate. This is where intelligence can become an effective part of the organisation's solution. Finished intelligence is actionable, not because it just contains accurate and relevant data, because it includes insights that drive decisions and make organisations more ready. Although we can't stop threats from existing, we can reduce the impact and the exposure of these on our people, property and assets by understanding how they come together and the real effect that they are going to have on us. To become truly intelligence-led, organisations need to be consuming and operating within an environment that has accurate, timely and relevant, but most importantly, actionable intelligence, because it gives decision makers within these organisations a clear advantage. One of the main reasons that we've seen over recent years as we've developed out the Risk Intelligence Centre within Securitas is organisations seeking to become increasingly intelligence-led. And we've seen that this has been influenced by a number of factors, but typically They are looking for timely intelligence that grants them additional time to prepare and react ahead of these threats. They are looking to have trust and comfort within one partner that can provide both intelligence and physical and technological security solutions. And most importantly, again, this intelligence helps to promote actionability and helps these organizations and entities get ahead of these trends before they become a threat to themselves. So hopefully that has provided a good insight into what it is that we do here at the Risk Intelligence Centre at Securitas, and we will now move on to some of the regional risks with Josh.
Hello, everyone. So today I'll be talking about the four main risks we've identified in the APAC region. So those are geopolitical competition, primarily in the maritime domain, cyber threats and financial crime, extreme weather, and external global threats that can affect APAC. So before I get into that, we'll do another quick Menti quiz or poll. And this one is what was ranked the #1 business risk in Asia Pacific for 2026. So that could be natural catastrophes, it could be cyber incidents, a talent shortage, or fire and explosions, so issues at business sites. Obviously, at the RIC, this is not an exhaustive list of the kind of things that we cover. In APAC, we see all kinds of issues. Obviously, there's been a number of conflicts recently, but also there's incidents of terrorism and significant protest activity in a lot of countries. But I would say that I can see that cyber incidents make up a huge part of that, and I will be talking about that in the coming slides. But yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Yes, and everyone was correct. Well, 17 people. Good job. So moving on to the first of our main threats, that's geopolitical competition. There are several key arenas of competition that have the capacity to produce tensions. Those would be between China and Taiwan, and also Japan a lot recently. Some more historical ones like between North Korea and South Korea, or between India and Pakistan, and some new ones, although also historical, but have recently become more major flashpoints, such as Thailand, Cambodia. And these areas of competition sometimes have the capacity to develop into kinetic action, such as we saw with India and Pakistan and Cambodia and Thailand. And these can cause quite severe threats to human life and to business continuity. The other main area I would say that we see a lot of threats is in the maritime domain, as I said. One of the key areas of this is the South China Sea, so between China, the Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Vietnam. As you can see on the map on the right, that's a map from the RIC's briefs and events page. There's a concentration of briefs and events that we've written or identified in the South China Sea. That's around the Scarborough Shoal. And so that's where there can be quite a lot of confrontations, especially between vessels. So these kind of sovereignty disputes towards islands, they produce quite a significant threat of miscalculation. There's been a number of confrontations between vessels, often between China and Philippines at the moment. And these can disrupt commercial operations such as shipping and extractive industries. The other key threat in the maritime domain would be to undersea infrastructure. We've seen this a number of times around Taiwan, and this can cause knock-on effects to telecommunications and energy and connectivity. The other area that we see it is in terms of competition for sort of contracts and partnerships. We've seen this a lot in the Pacific between Australia, New Zealand, and China. And while this obviously creates a significant amount of volatility, it also provides opportunities for lucrative deals and for development. We've also seen a lot of use of economic policy as a form of leverage. We've seen it through Taiwan's restrictions on semiconductors to China, but also Chinese restrictions on rare earths. So this obviously has the capacity to really fragment trade and to cause issues in supply chains for downstream industries. And a lot of states are either taking the course of moving closer to China, such as Pakistan, so that they can secure these rare earths or these key materials, or they are they are diversifying. They're trying to move away, and this causes quite a significant supply chain fragmentation, which can cause issues especially for companies traditionally dependent on China. So in the next 12 to 24 months, we will probably continue to see consistent flashpoints around maritime risks. It seems that is an enduring issue. They always have the capacity to generate more severe confrontations, especially as development activity on key disputed islands continues from involved parties. There's also a continued risk of recurring conflicts in previous area flashpoints, such as in between Thailand and Cambodia, as conflicts tend to recur in regions where they've occurred before. So that's always a threat and will continue to be a threat. And economic issues will continue to supply chains and economic fragmentation will continue to exacerbate. Moving on to the next one, it's cyber risks. There's a high level of cyber attacks across Asia, probably the highest in the world, primarily because Asian economies there's a lot of e-commerce in Asia, and the digital economies are very developed. Cyber attacks are either state-sponsored or they are by criminal groups. State-sponsored cyber attacks tend to increase during periods of geopolitical competition or during flashpoints, diplomatic flashpoints. And typically they target things like government websites, financial systems, and critical national infrastructure, and can cause quite severe disruptions to all of those, which can obviously have knock-on effects for the public and for businesses. With criminal actors, we see a high rate of fraud, and obviously these things are I would say that sorry, my brain apologies. OCG's criminal groups are mainly motivated by monetary gain, so they will often target private companies using stuff like ransomware or phishing attacks, and this will often target major financial hubs such as Hong Kong or Singapore. We also see that this has some external impacts or bigger impacts. Vietnam has quite a high level of fraud, and this has caused issues with its relationship with the US. The US has threatened to increase tariffs on Vietnam if they do not curb fraud. So we can see how cyber attacks can also have or cyber issues and fraud issues can have larger impacts. The other main issue that we're seeing quite a lot of, especially in Southeast Asia, is scam groups. We see a lot of their activity in poorly governed border areas in parts of Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar. There's a lot of human trafficking involved in this, and that's a threat to tourists, people coming to visit. They might get scammed into by, from time to time it's by jobs or it's by stuff like that, and then they get trafficked and forced to work in these scam compounds. There's a lot of enforcement about that. That's significantly escalated in recent months and in 2026. But because of these areas being very poorly governed and quite difficult to control, it means that they are a persistent threat. So over the next 12 to 24 months, we can expect that as AI develops and becomes more sophisticated, it means that the capabilities of threat actors, such as OCGs or criminal groups, will have the capacity to outsmart cybersecurity systems. So that will require a lot more sophistication on the cybersecurity side, investment specifically. This is also going to support state-backed cyber attacks, posing even more significant threats to CNI. And while the scam compound crackdown will probably continue, like I said, we think that there are going to be challenges. Just to note, the two things on the right-hand side, those are briefs from the RIC, which essentially we've written on these. So Singapore confirms China-linked cyber espionage group targeting telecom infrastructure. That's a good example of that. Moving on to the third one, it's extreme weather events. Obviously, one of the major ones for that would be extreme storms. The seasonal monsoon period that heavily affects Southeast Asia, especially. 2025 was an especially severe one. We preemptively wrote a SITREP, which you can see that picture on the right is from, which is basically a long form report about extreme. In this case, it was about extreme storms. So 2025 was a very severe storm season. We saw a number of major ones such as Paper, Ragasa, and Matmo. And these caused significant loss of life and infrastructural damage, threats, significant business challenges operationally and financially, particularly in Southeast Asia, southern China, and Japan. Such events, they cause flooding, high winds, coastal swells, and they often prompt evacuations, which can have lasting impacts, especially if floodwaters don't recede immediately. And they can also carry secondary risks, which are often overlooked, I would say. In cases where flooding happens, that often leads to rises in waterborne diseases, such as cholera. So that can be a secondary issue that impacts the public and business continuity. Another major extreme weather issue is droughts and extreme heat. Southeast Asia and large parts of Asia, Australia, of course, are prone to periods of severe drought and humidity, which can have significant health impacts and can lead to restrictions such as curbs on outdoor work, which can affect construction, tourism, and agriculture. We're seeing that this might be worsening in 2026 with El Nino, the phenomenon essentially where the surface temperature of the ocean is heating up, which means there's going to be less storms theoretically, but it means that there's more droughts, less rain. So that's a big issue. A recurrent thing also that's exacerbating this is high levels of pollution, especially in parts of South Asia. We see this in New Delhi each year, that high pollution rates cause significant health challenges, and that's worsened by the high temperatures. There are also some chronic risks such as wildfires. This is obviously exacerbated by extreme heat. These wildfires are, of course, a major issue, but they primarily impact rural areas, and they're fairly sporadic and rarely impact urban settlements, but they can be significant issues, especially as we saw in Australia in recent years. The other thing is seismic risks, so earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis. Those are persistent issues across the Pacific Ring of Fire, but they are a long-standing issue that hasn't changed and is not an emerging threat that we perceive, but it's something to definitely keep in mind. So over the next 12 to 24 months, we can say that climate change is likely to continue to exacerbate the severity, frequency, and scope of extreme weather events, including storms and extreme heat. We can expect higher category storms and rapid intensification of those storms, and there will be little warning for precautions. And this is probably going to cause intensified urban flooding, especially in major cities such as Manila, Jakarta, Shanghai, Bangkok. And we can also expect longer heat waves and drought periods, which are going to strain critical national infrastructure and urban resilience and require significant government investment and also private investment in mitigation, in climate resilience infrastructure. The final threat we've identified is from external shocks. One of the main things that we've seen is that has impacted Asia over the last since the beginning of 2026 has obviously been the Iran conflict. That really showed Asia's vulnerability to external shocks and showed that many nations were heavily dependent on exports from the Middle East, and that disruptions to the Strait of Hormuz and oil and gas exports caused very severe issues across many countries in Asia. Many countries have been forced to implement emergency energy measures such as tax cuts, releasing reserves, work from home or conservation orders. And this is an ongoing issue because even though there's a ceasefire, peace negotiations have stalled significantly. And actually in the last 2 days, we've seen resumed kinetic strikes. So there's still a massive amount of volatility. Oil prices are probably going to remain quite high, and there's going to be continued issues of shortages. The other external shock that we've seen a lot since 2025 has been US policy in Asia and how that's affected states, specifically under the second Trump administration. Tariff unpredictability has caused many states to cause a lot of volatility in a lot of countries to do with trade, and has forced countries to seek deals with the US to try and avoid issues for key exports. There's also a lot of reshoring demands from the US, so that forces governments to seek investments in the US, which can be beneficial for companies, but also it creates a lot of unpredictability, which complicates investment and business planning. And obviously key to this has been US tensions with China and how that's affected Chinese policy to do with rare earths, and how that's affecting key exports of critical minerals and rare earths, and how that affects global tech sectors. So over the next 12 to 24 months, it's likely that states will continue to diversify their trade partnerships to mitigate their exposure to external shocks. So likely strengthening their own economies or their own internal industries, but also inter APAC between states in Asia relations or trade relations. So yes, those are the 4 main threats. Now we will move over to Alma, who will explain the more specific organizational impacts of these threats.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. So my section is just going to dive a bit deeper into the sort of specific threats we see within those 4 things that we talked about that Josh has mentioned. But before we do that, we've got another Menti question. Yeah, so what is the biggest threat your organization is facing in the APAC region? If you just scan that and could give some responses, that would be great. Protests. Yeah. 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 So these are kind of the more major things that we deal with on a sort of day-to-day basis here at the RIC as well. Cyber threats and protests, direct targeting, indirect targeting as well, critical infrastructures. Natural disasters, yeah. So all stuff we're going to be talking about. I can see there's a lot of cyber threats, cyber attacks on there. So that seems to be the more prominent one, which I can understand is a big concern for a lot of our clients as well. Okay. So with regards to impacts to businesses in APAC from geopolitical competition. This sort of increases the global market competitiveness, leading to these calls for an increase in domestic development of infrastructure to reduce that sort of international or Western reliance to build that national economy. Particularly with heightened levels of tech advancements, it gives rise to opportunities for those domestic organizations as well. While improving those domestic reliances, this is likely to threaten the more long-term and strategic business partnerships among countries, as well as those bilateral deals, by reducing that collaborative projects and potentially seeing a loss of contract renewals. And we can see that these sort of collapses in international business alliances tend to deter investors from making strategic investment decisions in organizations within APAC, refraining from entering new partnerships due to the perceived lack of sort of success, and leading to a further sort of market volatility globally. And then we also see like a vulnerable market with geopolitical competition gives rise to insider threats, which I know a lot of our customers are quite concerned about. This can be sort of identified in forms of corporate espionage or economic espionage, highlighting those risks to intellectual property and those threats to external partners as well, potentially posing that reputational damage and negatively influencing the prospective business relations. This emphasizes the need to sort of heighten the data protection measures, particularly as geopolitical competition escalates amid bilateral tensions and amid conflicts. It also goes without saying that these lack of protection is going to have that additional brand image harm to business partners as well. Just move on to the next slide. So with cyber threats, which is one of the most biggest concerns that you all had, it's also some of the biggest concerns that our clients are facing at the moment as well. Many people assume that cyber attacks occur as a one-off basis, but cyber threats tend to have the capacity to pose immediate to long-term disruptions, as threat actors can obtain sort of the personally identifiable information, so PIIs, which can then be used for future phishing tactics or techniques and procedures against organizations and individuals, or even further economic espionages. And in these cases, typically state-backed adversaries are most likely to target those state-sponsored organizations, typically within tech and finance and defense sectors, which act as sort of the backbone to many economies of nations, as well as the critical national infrastructures due to their sort of sensitive nature and the data that they can contain, and the links that these have to certain governments that can be exploited and accessed. Another sector that remains persistently targeted is the retail industry. As you can see on the example that I've given on the side, one of the more recent large-scale APAC cyber attacks on a retail organization was against the South Korean retail and technology organization Coupang. I hope I'm saying that right, Coupang, which saw a significant number of customers' PIIs being leaked. And of course, the knock-on impacts this has can lead to extensive investigations and legal challenges, and even compensatory penalties. And I believe Coupang had all of those investigations, and they had to sort of compensate customers who had data leaks and stuff. And what tends to happen with a cyber attack, when a cyber attack occurs in an organization in the similar sector or within the region, is that it tends to sort of act as a trigger for many other organizations within the same industry to do that internal review of their cybersecurity capabilities. And what we will likely see is, as an outcome, of these CNI organizations being targeted is that the government is likely to seek more restrictive hiring practices and even potentially have current employees reassess their sort of access levels to make sure they've got the appropriate, clearance levels to access information. And this comes along with, large scale sort of reputational damage as well, particularly when it involves a lot of data leaks and high level operational disruptions. It kind of reflects poorly on that organization's cybersecurity capabilities. And so, of course, it's going to have reputational damages and even incur additional costs for further cybersecurity measures that they have to develop and even deter other customers or external partners from doing businesses with them. So if we move on to the next one. So with extreme weather, we see that APAC is highly likely to pose operational disruptions with things like office closures or even needing to implement alternative working conditions such as work from home conditions and even occurrences of power outages, which can likely halt business operations for a large amount of time, can even occur financial loss as well. We also see that sites located in more high-risk regions, such as like a large water plain area or like an area with repetitive landslide, are more severely impacted, while organizations operating in a more rural area with scarce resources are less likely to attain these emergency services, which are very important for the post-storm recovery plans. And it's going to further deter those, customers or organizations from constructing new sites or even moving offices to these areas. And as Josh had mentioned, as the climate change continues to exacerbate, there is potentially going to be, a national policies implemented for working conditions, particularly in the APAC region where these extreme weathers are more likely to occur, particularly as we've seen with employees increasingly demanding adaptable working conditions. In a case with COVID as well, post-COVID, these sort of work from home conditions were implemented into the office legal policies. So especially with like corporate offices where they're not frontline roles as well. And with CNI being one of those key functioning infrastructures of organizations in multiple sectors, threats to CNI from weather complications have graver implications and are likely to have those knock-on sort of impacts to the state as well, due to those significant connections with the government and infrastructures such as electricity lines is a heightened risk of operational disruptions, and has that potential to impact powers in a wider region and not just the company, and again posing that sort of reputational damage as well about infrastructures and their sort of capacity to withstand such conditions. This is also likely to increase company insurance premiums to account for those damages to the sites, employee safety and operational continuity as well. And of course, we have to talk about, it's going to certainly result in flights and rail cancellations or delays or rescheduling, which is, going to reduce those attendees in offices, even delay visits or planned VIP events as well. And then lastly, when we talk about the sort of global threats, outbreaks of conflicts, such as the Iran conflict or the Gaza-Israel, it heightens the activism threat landscape. Some people also mentioned that protests were one of their biggest concerns. So it is also the biggest concerns for some of our clients right now as well, particularly seeing a lot of protests against organizations in the aerospace and defense industry and tech and even finance sectors, and an increasingly new trend that we've seen is, activists using open source information to sort of identify these links between organizations and their sort of complicity, as they would call it, in geopolitical conflicts. And they tend to also protest against not only directly targeting these organizations, but also their secondary and tertiary parties as well, which remain a sort of prominent method to boycotting and boycotting complicit organizations due to, the number of organizations that cut ties with, sort of pushing them to cut ties with their target organizations, and reduce those sort of supply of equipments to nations that they think are involved in these conflicts. And we also see that escalations in conflicts act as a sort of flashpoint for activism across the region, targeting both private and public companies with more radical tactics, techniques, and procedures, as seen in worker strikes at dock ports in Sweden and Italy, in solidarity with pro-Palestine causes as well. We've also seen sort of large-scale activism across multiple points, impacting the supply chains, and particularly with those persistent targeting of commercial shipping within the Strait of Hormuz. It's likely to sort of shift that investor confidence as well, against those companies that are reliant on those routes and those logistical companies operating in that region. And it's further feeding into that geopolitical competition and market volatility as well. So we see that all of this is a sort of a cyclical thing that works together. And we've also seen cases in that example that I've given where threat actors have tended to leverage these geopolitical conflicts to target organizations, particularly those that sort of fit into these suffering industry markets amid these conflicts. And we also have to talk about the operational impacts. With seeing with the Iran conflict, it's led to multiple office closures, which has occurred out of the conflict, and as a more immediate impact, and as a longer term impact, there's this pressure externally to potentially cut ties contractually, and or to dissolve those partnerships, and to sustain their operational continuity, and to reduce that pressure from activism as well. But yeah, those are the sort of sort of concise ways. I've just given a few examples on how those 4 different areas impact organizations more directly, as well as sort of an indirect way as well. But that being said, I will pass it back on to Sophie, I believe.
Perfect. Thanks, Alma. That's great. And thank you both, Josh and Alma, for giving us a really great overview of some of the biggest threats and risks impacting the region that we've seen already so far in recent years, and that we are continuing to see throughout 2026 and beyond. But for us, and what it is that we try to help our clients with every day is helping to proactively identify these threats and risks before they impact organizations. And one of the ways that we can do that is helping to highlight and inform our clients of specific flashpoints where we see that threat and risk, or the potential for threats and risks are going to be increased. Unfortunately, we can't always tie it down to specific days or time periods. However, we do have the ability to see or identify where threats and risks are going to be heightened in line with specific time periods or dates. These typically fall in line with specific flashpoints such as elections, anniversaries of significant activities such as conflicts, religious observations, and planned protest campaigns. And each of these types of events can impact threat trends, domestic and international policies, and impact supply chain disruption. So although we aren't able to most of the time be able to predict exactly when threats and risks are going to target businesses, these keeping an eye on these specific time periods and dates throughout the coming months and coming years are a really effective way to help organisations be prepared and ensure that they have their security procedures as well as kind of internal operational procedures strengthened and ready for potential impacts of these threats and risks, whether that is elections that can cause local disruption and lasting change to policy landscapes, anniversaries of things like conflicts that can impact activism, threat trends, and religious observations that can be exploited by different threat actors, whether that's extremists, criminals, or activists. So I think as well, what we've observed over recent years is the increasing impact of trends that have happened or threat events that have happened globally and the impact that they've had at the local level. And this calendar style list here is taken from our annual intelligence estimate, which is reportedly produced each year, talking about the upcoming threats and risks for the coming year, and allows our analysts to provide their insights on what they think are the biggest threats and risks that are going to impact organisations over the next year. We'll move on to another question that we have here, which is what is the percentage of company, or what percentage of companies say that they are fully prepared for a regional crisis? I think something that we have also observed in recent years is the kind of standing up of specific crisis management teams within organisation industries in response to this observation or kind of realisation from organisations across the globe that the impact of crises, whether that is within a specific country or specific region or globally, the direct impact that they can have on their operations, whether that is against their physical security, reputational damages. And although we have seen this shift in the way that organisations set themselves up internally, we still see that there is a significant gap, especially in the kind of understanding and the trust in that. But this has been taken from a study of organisations, and what the correct answer actually is 10 to 20%. I think there are quite a lot of factors that will filter into the reason behind this. And I think one of the main things that we have seen is that regional crises and the threats that impact businesses, they change and evolve and have done significantly over recent years, that although you can come prepared with measures and protocols and instant response plans for when these things happen, the specific impact that they have continues to kind of evolve and increase. So although organisations are prepared essentially by the book and they have all of these things in place, because of the diversity of these threats, it is becoming difficult to be kind of quote fully prepared. So one of the ways that we help our clients with using intelligence to protect themselves from threats and risks is by providing this situational awareness of what is it that is going on in the world, whether that is in the country that you operate in, the industry that you're part of, or kind of wider global or regional threat trends, and giving proactive intelligence to clients to help them be aware of what it is that is going on. This can help them to identify any vulnerable assets, whether those are physical assets or digital assets. It can be down to your people. Again, not always people on sites, but executives that are travelling globally and the potential impact of these threats and risks on them. This protective intelligence will help them to see what it is that is specifically targeting or impacting their organisations, the areas that they operate in, or the industries that they're part of, and help to give them these early warning indicators of potential crises or threats that could directly impact them. In the event that we see these crises or regional threats unfolding, it helps, or the use of intelligence helps organisations to have their crisis and incident response kind of implemented as soon as possible and effectively alongside the situation that is unfolding at the time. And ultimately, it is our aim to reduce the organisational impacts from these crises or these trends or threats, helping to protect them, typically the security in the world that we kind of work within, but as well as their reputational damages and operational disruptions. So it's a full life cycle of different types of intelligence and areas where intelligence can be useful, integrated that in integration with organisations' own practices and the measures that they have to help them be fully protected. So we have another question here, which is from your own experiences from the organisations that you are part of or institutions you're part of, during a regional crisis, where do you think your teams lose the most time? So do you think that is from being notified or getting alerted of these threats unfolding? Is it challenges with verifying what it is that is true and what it is false? We've obviously talked a bit today about the noise that we are experiencing and how that is continuing to grow. Or can it be what the impact is on the specific business that you are part of or the institution that you're part of and what it really means for you? Or along a similar line, translating what the local context is for global leaders. Big organisations have lots of stakeholders that they have to relay this intelligence and information to help them gain the decision-making advantage, and it is really key to make sure that the local context of not only where your business operates from, but if you have got teams all over the world, exactly what it is it means for them. But yeah, definitely understanding the business impact is something that we see as key to providing effective intelligence to organisations regardless of where they operate and the industry that they're part of, because ultimately understanding what it is that is going on in the world is great, but knowing what it is, how it impacts you, we typically term it as so what if, what can you do about it, and understanding those things in context of your business and how you operate is increasingly important. So finally, we'll give some of our insights into some of the practical strategies that we typically recommend for organisations in context of these emerging threats. So helping them to stay relevant and agile in this increasingly volatile threat landscape within the APAC region. A lot of these strategies are kind of intertwined and interact with each other, but one of the main areas that we kind of promote as helping to protect businesses is ensuring that they have robust business continuity, resilience and incident response plans in place, making sure that they are kept up to date and most importantly are aligned with the current threat environment. We often see that organisations will have these plans in place, but unfortunately they are slightly outdated and not aligned with what we are currently seeing, whether that is differences in tactics used by threat actors or taking into consideration, again, the context of local and global threats. And one of the main areas that we kind of promote is ensuring that organisations have what we would term a trigger matrix, so effectively a list of actions or potential observable entities that organisations can have a look out for, and if these types of activities are happening in the global security and threat landscape, this is when they may need to enact these specific plans to help protect their people, property and assets. As well, ensuring that all physical and cybersecurity measures and strategies are tailored to the threat environment, again, going back to different tactics that threat actors can use, whether that is physical security strategies aimed at protecting physical sites from increasingly radical activist tactics. We have seen increasing trends of activists causing physical damage to sites or blocking sites' entrances, and ensuring that physical security strategies and cyber as well are there to be able to help protect each site and each business in the times where they really need them. I think as well, making sure that these strategies focus on being proactive rather than reactive, working in in kind of correspondence with these flashpoints and times of heightened threat and risk, and making sure that security strategies are aligned with those. Supply chain resilience is something that Alma mentioned as well. Throughout recent years, particularly following the COVID-19 outbreak, ensuring that organisations have supply chain resilience has become really key, mainly through the diversification of this to limit the potential impacts of different threats, whether that is really high level threats, so global conflicts, geopolitical tensions, down to extreme weather events impacting manufacturing sites that then can delay supply chain and cause longer term impacts. Lastly, scenario planning and forecasting is something that we see as a really key way of testing all the measures that we've kind of mentioned before, and helping to ensure that organisations are planned for every scenario that could unfold in front of them. So finally, we have a few closing questions to help kind of round up what we have gone through today. So we would love to get some of your insights on what it is that would make risk intelligence more valuable for your organisation. Would that be gaining better local insights on incidents that happen in the APAC region, obtaining faster validation of breaking incidents, both locally and nationally or globally, having some more insights on recommendations for action, specifically within security, or helping to better integrate into crisis decision making. So like all of these topics can definitely feature as part of intelligence programs, but it's interesting to see that it really is this translation of what is happening in the world and into what it means for you, and the recommendations to help protect is obviously a really key thing. So yeah, that is interesting. And yeah, just to close off, I'll pass back over to Peter to go over any questions that we've had so far. But yeah, thank you very much everyone for your time today.
Thank you, Sophie. So currently we have several questions in my hand. Let me share it. The first question comes from one of our audiences is, would be good to know how we receive the intel and what is open source intelligence is. And so what goes into creating the finished intelligence? Over to our speakers.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I can take that one. So open in the Risk Intelligence Centre, I can talk about what we do in terms of open source intelligence. We scrape all open source intelligence as well as social media intelligence. We tend to like to separate the two because, as you will all be aware, people love to lie on social media. So it's really important that we as analysts corroborate what we are finding online. We also have some closed sources with links to other intelligence agencies and local law enforcement. And then human intelligence from our Securitas organization. We're in a really strong position in the fact that we are truly a global security organization, and therefore we have boots on the ground in every area of the globe. And when something happens that may not be on our doorstep, we can very quickly connect with the team on the ground there to verify what is actually going on versus a lot of the scaremongering that might be happening depending on which media outlet you're looking at.
Thanks, Laura. So the next question is, when a major regional incident happens, how do you separate real risks from the rumors, noises, or exaggerated reports?
I can take that. Well, I mean, obviously, there's it with like a major emerging incidents. It's really it can be very difficult, obviously, because especially, let's say, for example, the Thailand-Cambodia conflict that happened fairly recently. there's just so much information coming in when things start off, and there's so much false information that it is very difficult to verify what's true and what's not. In the RIC, we typically try to be as unbiased as possible, but to verify as strongly as possible. If we're ever unsure about information, we make sure to note that. But it's often valuable to know about things, even if they are later proven untrue. What we try to do quite a lot is to balance assurance and alarm. We want people to know what's going on, but we also don't want to unduly alarm people about something that might not be of concern. But it's a learning curve. Obviously, the Iran conflict, outside of obviously APAC, but the Iran conflict has been a massive learning opportunity for the RIC and how we cover conflicts. So it is difficult, but it's a lot of it is about verification and about how you kind of handle the information and how you present it in our briefs and in our products. So yes.
Thank you, Josh. We have a question from an anonymous audience. In military world, there's a multi-domain operations. What are the domains that exist in the corporate security is? Well, I think it's quite expert question.
I'll be the expert, will I? Yeah, really good question. You know, from a Securitas point of view, it's really important that, you know, when we are working with our clients, we're offering a full security solution in order to, you know, be multi-domain and not just have a guard on a gate. You know, what else could we be doing for our clients to ensure that everything has been thought about, whether that's you know, your cybersecurity, excuse me, intelligence. You know, we in an ideal world would be able to put together a solution that is intelligence-led, and intelligence-led security, be that through intelligence monitoring and risk assessments to ensure that we're providing the correct number of security officers at your sites, perhaps some mobile patrol, and Securitas technology as well with you know, your access control, CCTV, and where we see intelligence, I would say, have the most impact within the organizations that we work with is when the intelligence is really embedded within the security function, so that your security teams are involved in Sorry, my Wi-Fi completely went. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Apologies. I don't know when I got cut off, but yeah, embedding a full security solution for our customers is really key, and ensuring that you know, any intelligence that we're able to provide is embedded within your security teams to aid decision making.
Great. Thank you, Laura. So we have another question. To what extent do your team use artificial intelligence to provide customer with a quality risk forecast or alert?
I'm happy to take that one. So currently, obviously, artificial intelligence and the use of that is a big thing for many organisations, and it is something that's really big for Securitas and the Risk Intelligence Centre as well. all of the intelligence that we produce, the finished intelligence, is fully produced by a human analyst. But what we are starting to integrate into the way that we work is the use of artificial intelligence to help us with the collection, kind of validation, and of the initial kind of data and information that we can observe from open sources, whether that's social media or traditional news media, to be able to help us collect that faster, more reliable, to help our analysts be able to get on top of these threats and risks as they emerge and the trends. So being able to integrate that into the technologies that we use, whether that is from a production point of view or from our customer facing, how they receive the intelligence that we have. So it's more from a process and operational point of view rather than to help us with the analysis. We are really big believers in using human analysts who have the expertise, the insights and the experience to be able to add the depth to the intelligence that we provide to our clients. So all of the intelligence that is disseminated from the RIC has had the involvement of that. But we AI will definitely become a big part of helping us to kind of streamline and make our workflows more efficient, but we're unlikely to be kind of the sole producer of the intelligence that we disseminate to our clients. So hopefully that helps to answer that question.
Well, thank you, Sophie. So time is limited. Let me ask the last question. So how can the companies better understand risks affecting their suppliers, especially the ones they do not directly manage?
Yeah, I can answer this one. So supply chains often, they run through multiple countries and handlers, and it's sort of important to understand, that they all work under different rules and regulations or legislations, and it's important to understand the variety of threats, that can occur during different stages of the supply chains, and being aware of the sort of local or regional customs and having trusted suppliers. And I think this is why we sort of continue to monitor those external warnings and indicators to identify those kind of trends that we see in supply chain disruptions, and at what point and what kind of actors or other sort of risks that come in between, and how this can impact our organizations, and also understanding how your secondary and tertiary organizations can also be impacted by these sort of external impacts as well. And looking at the global market and the risks to a variety of industries will also help you see sort of the risks to your specific suppliers, and catching that early on enough to find ways to mitigate those incidents from occurring. Yeah.
Thank you, Alma. I think we have sorry, the real last questions here. So for organizations already leveraging intelligence services from other providers, how does Securitas Risk Intelligence Center add value or integrate it with existing security infrastructure? This is quite a good question.
It's a great question. Yeah, we work with many organizations who have multiple sources or multiple providers supporting their intelligence function. There's usually one supplier that can't do everything. So we make sure that we really understand what they're currently using, how they're using it, and if there's anything that the Risk Intelligence Centre can do to fill the gaps that they may not be getting. A lot of our customers that we speak to, may already have an alerting provider, and alerting is great, letting you know of incidents that are happening nearby. But what it often doesn't give you is the so what does that really mean to my organization, or the what if, what might happen next, what should we do about it. And that's where the Risk Intelligence Centre really specialise with our, our analyst team who are specifically writing an assessment based on the so what, the what if, and the what can be done about it. So yeah, every organisation is different, but we would make sure that we offer something that integrates value to support further with what your current programme is doing.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, all of the speakers. Thank you, all the audience, for joining. So I think we are now at the end to our webinar. So I think we will have more webinars and events in the near future. And please keep in touch by scanning the QR code of our website and LinkedIn here on the screen now. And yeah, keep in touch. Hope you have a great day ahead. Thank you all. Bye-bye.